Hey everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be talking all about Wargaming's latest map in the game, that is Berlin. This is, I guess, what Berlin would look like towards the latter part of the war. And all you really need to know in World of Tanks is what I'm going to try to tell you today. How this vehicle, well, how this map plays out. And also, I'm going to be highlighting some of my gameplay here in the French premium heavy tank. It's the Somua SM. So I've only managed to get into Berlin about 6 times, which is why I guess that it's taken me a while to be able to actually get a video up on the map and try to give my tips and tricks for it. If I've only managed to get into the map 6 times, and I've played probably hundreds, if not 1,000 games since the patch where Berlin was introduced, yeah, it's going to take me a while to be able to form an opinion on it. But I'm starting to feel like I get there. I played light tanks, I played tank destroyers, I played heavy tanks, and I played some medium tanks on this map as well. So let's talk about, before we jump into the ins and outs of Berlin, let's talk about this tank, this Tier 8 French premium heavy tank, the Somua SM. This vehicle is absolutely perfect for the Berlin map. This vehicle has gun depression where it needs gun depression, and it has a big old magazine for where it needs that as well. We were able to put 5 100mm rounds towards the T-32 on the enemy team, and really what was he to do? He got caught out in the open. Looks like he's just trying to figure out how Berlin plays as well, and although one of them bounced off the front of the tank, we're able to do 1,191 damage there. This vehicle is, I think it's really underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this. You hear a lot of people talking about tanks like the Defender, you hear a lot of people talking about tanks like the Italian auto-reloaders. You hear people talking about tanks like the LT-432, but the Somua SM is just absolutely brutal for these short to mid-range engagements. The tank's poor accuracy of 0.4 doesn't really matter when your opponents are at 100 meters. And then, what it comes down to is really the 5 100mm rounds that this vehicle has with only a 2.25 second intra-clip reload. And so if you catch somebody unaware, or if you use your marksmanship to be able to lock down their tracks multiple times, you're killing the entirety of a heavy tank that's only 1 tier lower than you within the how long is it going to be? 9 seconds that it takes to be able to fire off this entire magazine. That's 1,500 damage in 9 seconds. And when you're thinking about how much damage do I need to do at tier 8, I feel like 2,000 is a great result. If you're starting to get up towards 2,500, well, that's really, really nice indeed. And 3,000, wow, you're going to make some very good credits and you're going to get a very good win ratio if you're able to do that in every single game. As long as, of course, you're doing it while the game is able to be won, and you're not just kind of hiding around at the back of the map and using all of your team as meat shields. If you're the one at the front, if you're the one trying to be able to effectively engage, then you will be able to do very well in this vehicle. You can see I'm actually holding my shells here because I'm thinking, when is this IS-3 going to use his repair kit? And there you go. IS-3 eventually used the repair kit, and we were able to put 4 rounds in a row into the top tier heavy tank on the enemy team, and it's looking like my team might be able to finish him off. Oh no, actually the T-29 shuts down the T-29 on my team who was engaging the IS-3, and so the tier 8 Soviet heavy tank is still in it. Excuse me, sorry, don't know where that came from. Oh, don't get worried, don't get worried. I'm sure there's going to be lots of YouTube comments around with what's going on in the world at the moment. No, I think I just breathed like a donkey there. I think that's what the issue was. So let's talk about this part of the Berlin map. This part of the Berlin map looks like Himmelsdorf, it looks like Runeberg. It's close quarters city fighting. So if you've got a heavy tank or a heavily armored medium tank, then I would thoroughly recommend making your way into this position. If you go into this position, you are going to be able to use all of the different alcove positions that you've seen me using, where we get to go opposite the enemy tanks and aim down on them through the streets. And then what you want to do is make sure you progress through here quickly. You saw that I stopped and I aimed towards the Progetto. That's because if they're sitting in the bunker, it's incredibly hard to be able to traverse through this part of the street. And so what you want to do is try to cross as quickly as you can and make your way up here, where you see that I am taking my Somua SM. From this position, you can be able to get crossfire through in towards the center, and you can catch up in inevitable melee engagements like against this T-29 now. And it doesn't, I mean, you just see what this tank does to lower tiered heavies. It's absolutely monstrous. And the crazy thing about this vehicle as well, if you're thinking it's a glass cannon like the 5100, well, that's not the case. And that's because it's got 140mm of frontal hull armor and 120 millimeters of turret armor, which is easily able to bounce rounds of up to about 200, sometimes even 230 millimeters of penetration due to the sloping on it. This thing is an absolute hidden gem. I really don't see that many of these things in the battlefield, and I don't see many people taking them out. I would use these things in front line as well, especially when the battle lines are drawn towards the latter part. Just this big mag, decent damage per minute, and good frontal armor, especially inside front line when not everybody is slinging premium rounds, can be completely brutal. And the aim time, the accuracy on this vehicle, definitely not the best, but if you've got yourself a French heavy tank, maybe you've got yourself an AMX M451, the best tier 9 heavy tank in the game, the MLE 51 I should say, sorry, not the M451, then it works. It works very well. And when you get yourself on a Berlin map as well, then in those close quarters situations in the northern part of the map, it feels great. But one of the things that's nice about this heavy tank is that also with 10 degrees of gun depression, when you do get yourself on a ridge line, it still works as well. And within the first 6 minutes of this battle, we are sitting at 6,500 damage. Now look, this is not a normal game for this tank. This is definitely one of the highest damage and highest experience results that I'm going to have in any of my vehicles over the last few thousand games. And while we have enough to be able to blind fire at the SU-130 PM to see if we could find him in that location, making sure that I pause it there to finish him off. And then, of course, good QuickyBaby poses for the camera. But while this will inevitably become the thumbnail of this video, or maybe it won't, maybe my fly around Berlin will be able to take over. Now I want to spend a little bit of time actually showing you what the Berlin map is all about and how I feel that it should be played. Alright, so Berlin, from what I've been able to experience, if you're able to take the bunker, which you have to do through this location here, it does provide ample opportunity to be able to get crossfire out along the streets, and if the enemies decide to be able to push the south, well then you've got a little bit of cover in this alcove here to be able to engage them as well. It will be a lot harder to be able to handle that, because as you can see, there's 2 trenches that run down either side of the bunker that tanks will be able to push in, either from one side or from the other side in, and then you can manage to get really good advantageous positions in these locations of the map right about here to be able to spot up, use the bushes to be able to catch some of the tank destroyers who love to sit towards this part of the map. I really feel like the south is an incredibly hard position to be able to push through because of these frankly overpowered locations here. If you have tanks sitting in these situations, it's very hard for the bunker to be able to get effective shots towards them. They'll be able to sit hold down, especially if they've got decent turrets, and they'll be able to pop up and use these bushes to be able to dominate view range all along the south. I think the south is probably the hardest part of the map to be able to effectively push, and I thoroughly wouldn't recommend to do it. What I feel that this map, if you're able, well, when I say I thoroughly wouldn't recommend to push the south, if you feel like the enemies aren't defending and if you feel like you can manage to get an overwhelming advance against them, then go for it. But what I found more often than not is that you'll try to push the south of the map, you'll end up in a position like this, or you'll end up in one of the trenches down here and you're able to spot up. But if your tank destroyers or your artillery aren't able to dig out all of the opponents that are camping here and some of them who are also up on the ridges along here, then you're just going to be able, they really can easily hold you back. Again, of course, if you notice the enemies aren't defending, then go for it. Because if you can take the south and you can manage to make your way into positions such as here at the back and be able to use some of the bushes to be able to start to gain fire against your opponents, or then if you make it into, so we say their rear trenches here, then you really are rocking and rolling. Because then you're going to be able to push up towards their cap circle, and if you can sit yourself in a location here, or alternatively, if you just keep rolling forwards and keep dominating your opponents, then you're going to do very well. One thing I'd like to highlight is that I still don't understand why Wargaming don't make these cap circles even. Sure, I guess if the Eastern team is able to take this cap circle and end up here, that's going to be incredibly powerful. But if we make our way over the Reichstag here, and then we go and take a look at the other cap circle as well, we can see there's actually a position here that the team that spawns on the west, if they manage to take the south, can just sit safely. I never understand why Wargaming puts some cover to be able to allow one cap circle to be easier to attack than others, but oh well, hopefully people are still going to be able to dig them out. Maybe they're going to be able to splash, or maybe they're going to be able to flank in the trenches. But it really is a power move if you're able to get into a position here, and it will force any of the opponents to have to rush out over the bridge, rush into the open, into your team's line of fire to be able to dominate them as well. Whether you're able to take the northern part of this map and you're able actually to go over the northern side of the river remains to be seen. I really do find that this flank is not very well guarded, but being able to cross this bridge is very tricky. More often than not, you are going to get stuck in a location like this, and there will be some tank destroyer who just decides to make it his job to be able to shoot you. I guess if you're in a Soviet heavy tank and you've got a very low profile, then the edges of the bridge might be able to protect you, and if you do manage to make it over, then you will be able to hunt any of the artillery that like to skulk around this area. And if you can get rid of their artillery, then maybe you can get rid of their fire support. Although I do feel like this part of the map just isn't really used. Maybe it will become more used as we manage to get more games on the map and we start to develop a sense of how it should be played and how it should not be played. But at least for now, I feel like you are safer if you're in a heavy tank or a heavily armored medium tank of trying to brawl it through the town, which has lots of opportunities to get shots onto the whole of the rest of the map, including the bridge, including the bunker, including anyone who's caught out in the fields, and then use these kind of alcoves up here to be able to whittle down your opponents, and then as soon as you can get across, then I really feel like the battle is half won when you can try and take positions like this, because now you're shooting the sides and you're shooting the rear defensive line that your opponents have, and then as soon as you dig their tank destroyers and their tanks that are skulking around at the back out of these positions, then the flank will inevitably fall, and hopefully you're going to be able to develop a pincer maneuver on your opponents. And so all in all, Berlin, what do I think about it? Well, I first thought that it was going to be an absolute trash tier map because really people were going to rush into the dip, people were going to rush into the trenches, and people were importantly going to be able to rush into the bunker here. But the more that I play it, the more that I feel that actually maybe it's a bit of a grower. I feel like it's a map that is growing on me, and I'm really hoping that I can get a few more games in it in the upcoming weeks and months, so I can start to put some of the plans and maybe the tips and tricks that I suggested to you in this video into practice. But anyway, I think that's quite enough about Berlin. Let's take a quick look at the post-game stats that the Somua SM was able to achieve here. So unsurprisingly, a high caliber for this tier 8 and tier 7 game for the near 7,000 damage that we dealt in just over 6 minutes. This was 1,988 base experience points, and due to not firing any premium rounds in this game, 151,000 credits profit. This vehicle, it's just dominant. Sure, it probably doesn't do quite as well when you're against the tier 9 and tier 10 tanks on the enemy team, and they're pretty much going to be able to go through your armor every single time. But yeah, this is a tank that can deal 1,500 damage within 9 seconds of the first shot. And with 230 millimeters of penetration, it also doesn't have to dab the 2 key, at least all the time. But if you do choose to dab the 2 key in this tank, then you go up to 263 millimeters of penetration. That's really tier 10 standard pen, and that should be able to go through everything frontally, as long as you're willing to sometimes shoot at the weak points. So the Somua SM, definitely one of the hidden gems of, well, I'd say maybe not hidden gems, but underrated tier 8 premium tanks that I play. Well, not that I play, that I think the community plays, especially inside frontline. I do think that towards the latter parts of the game where you need a little bit of armor and you need a little bit of gun depression to be able to push on towards your opponents, this one is decent, and it's probably one of the, in my opinion, the 5 top tier premium tanks, at least currently in the meta at tier 8. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Hopefully you appreciated these tips and tricks for Berlin, or maybe you just enjoyed a French heavy tank absolutely slaughtering this German map. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, we are going to be featuring the T57 Heavy because it's top of the tree. It's top of the tree on the European server and I believe the American server as well, so you can get it for 30% discount and also get 5 times experience games all the way up the tree. So what better time to showcase every single tank so you can pick up some tips and tricks, and if you already have the vehicles, well, maybe you can come and laugh at me while I proceed to suck in a T69 or complain about the T54 now that it is a heavy tank and not a medium tank, right? Anyway, really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.